All right, listen up, y'all.
Greetings, everybody. This is another episode of All Things Education Official. I am your host and resident educator, Mr. Abdullah, giving you education from a foundational Black American male's perspective. Today, we're going to talk about, often in our community, we're talking about public schools versus private schools. I want you to listen to our first and only video clip of this video from a wonderful YouTube content creator, wonderful young lady. Her channel is Teacher Therapy. Please go check her out. Let's roll her first video about her experiences in private school.
The absolute worst, most damaging, most abominable experience I ever had in the classroom was at the private school that I taught. I made a video called Why I Quit Teaching Private School if you want to know more, but I will give you the highlights here. These families were wealthy, conservative, religious, and basically intact families. I could think of maybe one or two children that were in a single parent home. So according to my commenters, this should have been teaching utopia. And truth be told, I really thought that a religious private school would be a dramatically different experience than where I was coming from. But boy, was I wrong. To just give you a few bullet points, these children, they were middle schoolers, 7th and 8th grade. Their families and the community bullied and harassed me nonstop for the entire year that I was there. Within the first few weeks, the principal's son created a petition to get me fired and got about a third of the 7th graders to sign it. When that didn't work, they created career-ending, character and reputation destroying rumors about me and spread them all over the school. Just for fun, they made memes about me and spread them all over social media, attacking me in very personal ways that had absolutely nothing to do with my teaching strategies. And sadly, the parents did not behave much better. Most of the time, they completely refused to speak with me. However, they were more than happy to spread these rumors around the rumor mill. The ones that did talk to me were very condescending, cruel, accusatory, and there was basically nothing that I could say to clear myself in their eyes. It was definitely a guilty till proven innocent situation, but I never really got the chance to prove my innocence. And on top of that, on a day-to-day basis, the students were disrespectful, disobedient, and not very nice.
Well, this is something that we all knew to be true, educators, and for those of us who have attended public or private or both, which is, I fall in that category. I've attended private schools and public schools. So I did primary and some of my junior highs years in private schools. I did some high school in public, did some high school in private. So I do know the differences and subtle nuances, but let's go to phys.org in their June 25th 2020 article, Private School Education May Damage Students' Social and Emotional Development Studies Suggest. According to this article, privately educated students are more likely to experience bullying, start drinking earlier, and take more risk than their state school counterparts, a new study has found. Also, it states that the researchers found that attending a private school was of little benefit and actually had a negative impact on the aspects of development. Well, I'm going to tell you, the private school I went to was a predominantly Black private school in a much more, I would say, educated urban area in Detroit, Michigan. And in my high school in particular, there were a lot of young people that came from these neighborhoods that had affluent parents, 2-parent households. And what I did see was the same things that my friends that went to public high schools experienced. We experienced the exact same thing being in the city of Detroit. So we didn't really have a lot of differences between us outside of the fact that our class sizes were smaller. There was a lot more attention paid to us by our educators, primarily because we were paying for it. Our parents were paying for the education. But I did not see much as far as the social development that was much different. I will admit that the teachers gave us a lot more attention. Our parents were more involved, but it did not change the overall environment inside of the school for us interacting with our peers. It also says in this article, while private school children are less likely to have behavioral problems, the study found that 15% more likely to experience bullying over the course of secondary school education, 24% more likely to take risks, and are younger when they have their first alcoholic drink than students attending state schools. Our study adds to a growing body of evidence that many of the alleged benefits boasted by private schools are actually a product of their selective intake of students rather than the value that the schools add. Let me touch on that because that's so key, and that's very, very true. If you start talking about private schools, and if you also talk about charter schools, you got to include them in the conversation. It's called creaming. the students that you don't want there for whatever reason, maybe behavioral, it may be because you can't accommodate their individual education plan, they're let go. They're told, hey, we can't have you here. Even though we know private schools are expensive, people do vie to get into them. And the more notable the private school, the more people are willing to pay. So these schools are quick to say, hey, you know what? We don't want those problems, be they academic or social. So they'll say, we don't want you there. So they won't take them. So the problems that public schools have that they have to accept, private schools don't have to accept. So thereby raising what will be considered a score, graduation rates, a lot of things that public schools can't combat. Also, it says, finally, parents naturally want the best for their children, but for those who will struggle with the astronomical fees, our message is not to feel guilty. Private school is not a necessity, and it is not. But I would say that if you don't have the wherewithal to put in the work, to do the research and the study to give your child the best possible public school option, you need to consider the private school option. Maybe you may not be able to afford the private school option. That's perfectly fine and perfectly understandable, especially in today's economy. But I want to tell you that the best private school options for our children, meaning foundational Black American male children, would be culturally based schooling. We're talking about schools that focus on the culture of the children that dominate the classrooms. And in this particular instance, I'm talking about Black children. These schools are more culturally focused. They teach about community, and they also speak to the children about their options outside of college. College not being the only option for success. As I tell my students today, you do not have to go to college to be successful. There are many, many options. And I also let them know that if whatever field you like to be a part of does not require college or university, don't waste your time, don't waste your money, find options that work for you. And these culturally based schools tend to do that. They do push towards trades, culinary. They talk about cosmetology, they talk about barbery, things that are necessary in our community, give our children a leg up and get them out into the workforce, and sometimes helps them to become self-sufficient, helps them become self-actualizing. So I would like to say that the private school option is great because, as I was told, you're not paying for the seat that you're in, you're paying for the seat next to your child. So you're paying to say, I want to know what type of children are going to be in the classroom with my child. My youngest son attended a private school where there were only 3 children in his class. We're talking first grade, and it was magnificent. He had a wonderful relationship with the principal, with his teachers, the aides, as well as my daughter. She attended the same school for middle school. She did great. The principal actually worked with her one-to-one to get her into the high school she wanted to attend. So I'd like to say that there are certain benefits, but once again, I made sure that my last 2 children attended a culturally relevant school, not to mention it was Islamically based, as I am Muslim. So I wanted to make sure that they were aware of the Islamic position of education as well as the cultural position of education. And so if you are considering private school, remember, just because it's private doesn't mean it's great. Just because it's private doesn't mean your child is not going to run into some of the social pitfalls that they would do in a public school. Just paying money doesn't guarantee anything. Only thing it guarantees is that you're going to be paying the money. Make sure if you are going to do the private school, you do the research. Look for something that is culturally relevant to our children. I would say that once, twice, 3 times. Make sure that this school that you choose for your children is culturally relevant. Make sure that this school that you choose for your children is culturally relevant so that they will benefit not only from the educational perspective, but from the cultural perspective so that they can pour back into their community and that they know that there are options. White supremacy is what it is. It's going to be here. We don't even have to talk about it at this point. We need to discuss what we need to do to raise the levels of our children so that we can maintain a beautiful, wonderful, prosperous community in the future. Once again, this is another episode of All Things Education Official. I am your host and educator, Mr. Abdullah. Please subscribe, comment, like, and share. Do all 4. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Put us in the algorithm. Let them know that over on this channel, we're talking about education from a Black American male's perspective. And with that, you are dismissed.
Yeah!